Hello English 9, Ms. Long here. Hope you had a fabulous weekend, and we are now headed into our first full week of April. Hard to believe. Summer vacation's just around the corner. Well, in session 3 of Unit 7, we are continuing with Romeo and Juliet. And for those of you who had enough of the lovey-dovey stuff in Act 2, the plot thickens a little bit. Things do change a little bit in Acts 3 and 4, and we are now veering toward that tragedy that you've all heard about. But before we get started talking about the play and how everything's going to go bad, let's take a quick look at some business items. First, I want to point out that this next few weeks you're going to be busy with CMAS and Parks, which means we've been asked to reduce the workload just a little bit. So you'll find in your list of assignments an optional weekly journal. You do not have to complete this. If you don't complete it, it will not count against you. But if you want to get more points into your grade, which ultimately spreads things out, so if you did badly on another assignment, you want more good points to even that out, you're welcome to do it, and I will add the 30 points in. The main assignments that each of you needs to complete is a discussion where you're going to create your own question and answer it on Romeo and Juliet, and then take a quiz. And you'll be able to use a study guide that you'll create with that. And so it's really to your advantage to do the study guide, and you get extra credit for doing it. Don't forget the work ethic bonus is also an option for you. I noticed a few more of you have done that in Unit 7. I'm taking it session by session now, so you don't have to do the entire unit. Just focus on either creating a calendar for yourself that week or reflecting on how you used your time that week. And again, there's also the optional weekly journal. This is a free write. Don't have to do it. If you don't do it, it doesn't count against you. If you do it, it adds to your grade. So, the main thing of the week is to get ready for Romeo and Juliet. And as you get ready to read Acts 3 and 4 this week of Romeo and Juliet, you'll be able to use a study guide that is linked here. And a lot of these are going to be quiz questions. So if you do the study guide, you're going to do pretty well on the quiz. So you can get that by just clicking here and making a copy, and you'll see that there are a number of questions based on what's actually happening in this play. So you can fill that out as you're reading. It doesn't matter if it's a hard copy or an online copy. So either way is fine. As always, I would encourage you to read the summaries before you actually try to read the play, because then you know what's going on. Act 3 summary here and Act 4 summary here. So basically, as you head into Act 3, Romeo and Juliet have just been married in secret. But there's no honeymoon for Romeo and Juliet. Act 3 begins with a fight on the streets. And you'll recall what the prince had basically said. Anyone who fights from either house, that next person's going to be dead. Well, lo and behold, Tybalt, Juliet's cousin, comes looking for Romeo because he went to that party he wasn't supposed to go to, right? So finds Romeo, and Romeo can't really fight his new in-law, so instead Mercutio, his friend, steps up and says, I'll fight for you. Well, Mercutio has to fight Tybalt. Tybalt kills Mercutio. That makes Romeo pretty mad because, yes, he is in-law now with Tybalt, his family now with Tybalt, but Mercutio is his friend. So Romeo kills Juliet's cousin Tybalt. Not very auspicious for a new wedding. Well, Prince comes along and says, wait a minute, remember I said I was going to kill somebody who killed the next person in the house who continued this fight? Well, the person who's left standing is Romeo. But the prince decides to be merciful and banishes Romeo to away from the city, so there can be no more further fights on this. So in the short run, Romeo flees and runs away and hides with the friar, who knows what's really going on. The friar's attempting to patch this feud together to get over this family feud by marrying these young people, right? So Romeo's hiding with him. Meanwhile, the news of Tybalt's death has gotten back to Juliet, and she finds out that her new husband has killed her cousin, and she's distraught. Initially blaming Romeo, the nurse sides with her. Oh yeah, that bad, terrible Romeo just killed your cousin, and she gets mad at that, and then she goes back and says, but Romeo's my husband, so really I should be mad at him. But in any case, Juliet is extremely distraught, very, very upset. So the nurse goes to visit Friar Lawrence, who's the other conspirator here who knows what's going on, and shares the news that Juliet is so distraught, which makes Romeo upset that he's hurt his new bride so badly, so he decides to do the next logical thing and decide to kill himself. Well, Friar talks him out of this and says, hey, you really haven't consummated the marriage, and it's not really a marriage unless you do the deed. So you really haven't consummated the marriage. Go take care of that tonight, and then you can disappear to Mantua. And while you're in Mantua, I will make sure that we patch things up, and you and Juliet can be together. So that's the plan. Romeo is supposed to visit Juliet. They have their night together, and then he will take off. Well, in the meantime, Juliet is so distressed that her father, Lord Capulet, decides he's going to cheer her up by announcing to her that he's arranged for a marriage that week to another young handsome guy named Paris. Well, this isn't exactly good news for Juliet. And she's particularly upset because her father has announced that if she's not going to cooperate and live under his house and live under his roof and follow his rules, he's going to just kick her off on the street. So she either has to marry Paris, even though she's already married to Romeo secretly, or she'll be kicked out on the streets. So she's pretty upset. She goes to Friar Lawrence, who by this time has gotten Romeo off on his way to Mantua, and she explains the situation, cries, what are we going to do? And Friar Lawrence has another suicidal teenager on his hands at this point. So he comes up with a plan. And his plan is that he has a potion that will make Juliet appear as if she's dead. And if she's dead, she can't marry Paris, right? But it will really only put her to sleep for a long time. And when she wakes up, Romeo will be back, and the whole family will be so excited that she's alive again that they won't care that she married Romeo before she died and didn't really die. So with her potion in hand and a bit of a contrite heart, or at least a seemingly contrite heart, she goes back and tells her father, yes, I will agree to marry Paris. She takes the potion that night, and in the morning they wake up. They're supposed to have this wedding, but lo and behold, the bride is dead. So they put the bride in the tomb, which is actually an above ground kind of like cave-like kind of thing, and Juliet will pretend to be dead until Romeo comes back. And Friar Lawrence is supposed to arrange for Romeo to get the news that Juliet's not really dead, but please come back in this time period. And that's where we leave off in Act 4. So this is really the scene at the end of Act 4, and there's lots here worth discussing. And so in our discussion board this week, you will be making up your own question and answering your own question based on this rather convoluted turn of events. These here are some question stems that you might want to use. What motive is there for Friar Lawrence to keep these young people's marriage protected? Or what conclusions can you draw about Lord Tybalt from the way he treats his daughter when she doesn't want to get married as a 13-year-old to this handsome young man, Paris? That type of thing. You're going to use one of these stems, write your own question, and then you will answer that in a well-developed paragraph with support from the play using PEA, or Point Evidence Analysis. So keep that in mind, that whatever you say, you're going to need evidence from the play, and you're going to need to analyze why that's important. Then, after you've had a really good chance to talk about that, respond to other people on discussion boards, you will go along and take your quiz, your Act 3 quiz here. And Act 3 and 4 quiz, excuse me. This is a quiz you can take once. It is timed. You can't have more than an hour. You can't resume it. So make sure that when you sit down to take that quiz, you have plenty of time to finish it. Do be sure that if you have your study guide, you have that handy. It will help you out on the quiz. And then, once you've been helped out on the quiz with the study guide, you'll have a chance to turn that in for an extra 20 points of extra credit. Not a bad deal. You can't really go wrong with that. So, that's this week, and that will wrap things up. And as we look ahead to next week, you will find that you'll be reading the final act of Romeo and Juliet in Session 4, and you'll be doing a creative summative project for that. So look for some good news, enjoy the play in the meantime, and be in touch with any questions. Have a good week.